Today in the Smugglers Room, we're going to try to find our way. And we know this is the way. But this week, I'm thinking maybe more Sith is the way. That's coming up. What's up, you awesome geeks? I'm Brian, and welcome to the Smugglers Room. This week, this chubby geek is making a prop from Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Specifically, we're going to be making a Sith Wayfinder. This is one of those props we've been wanting to make for a really long time. However, I wanted to make more than just the Wayfinder. I wanted a really interesting way to display it. And that's when I ran across this image in the visual dictionary. This screenshot has a really good image of the actual Wayfinder, but what I found most interesting is this area up here. This shows the Wayfinder as it's plugged into Kylo's ship as he's flying towards Exegol. And that is what we want to build for the display. Now, before we dive into our project, I want to point out a couple of resources I've put in the description below. We created our own plans and designs to cut the Wayfinder and other parts of this project out on the laser cutter. But if you don't have a laser cutter, I have a solution for you. The DIY Designer YouTube channel also put up a blog build on Instructables, and they provided a PDF plan to build theirs out of cardboard. So I wanted to be able to give you another option in case you weren't able to follow us exactly. So you can go to those links, you can download their PDF plan and make it out of cardboard, at least the first step, and we'll get to the further steps as we go. Now, if you're part of the Smugglers Guild on Patreon, all the files we created for this project, they're available for you today. Okay, so that's enough jibber jabber and talk. Let's dive into our project. Alright, so the first step after cutting these pieces out is to assemble the skeleton of the Wayfinder. I'm using a bit of blue painter's tape to help me assemble each piece. Now I'm not going to do anything fancy here, just a bit of CA glue and activator to get these pieces glued up. I'm also not going to be too particular or too worried about perfection here. The reason? Because all of this structure will be covered, and I'll show you how we're going to do that in a bit. The base of the Wayfinder is assembled much the same way we did the top, gluing one piece together at a time. The last step coming up here will be to glue the entire section of recess panels on the base. Okay, so to give this a rough stone look, like the prop from the film, I've decided to use clay foam. Now, you all know I promote SKS HD foam whenever I can. But Steve, I'm sorry my friend, HD foam clay was out of stock when I started this project, so I had to go with FOMO. That being said, if any of you want to give this method a try, I would encourage you to help support SKS Props as another maker by giving his HD foam clay a try. I've linked to that one in the description below. Okay, so how about the process? Well, this is my first time using clay, but I can promise you it won't be my last. For those who have never used it, this stuff is truly like clay. You can see I was able to mold it around the Wayfinder and manipulate it with ease. I didn't feel rushed or concerned that it would set up too fast, and when I needed a bit of help, I just added a dab of water to my fingertip and it helped smooth out or increase the working time. My whole goal was to give the Wayfinder as much of the rough stone look as possible and try to mirror the film prop. So I wasn't too particular and I just worked until I was satisfied. Oh yeah, and one thing I really enjoyed was being able to use my clay sculpting tools on this stuff. I must tell you, I'm really excited to try more complex projects with the foam clay. So let's talk about the display box. It's nothing overly complicated. I used leftover plywood for the main base material, and then I simply drew up a design on the fly, glued it, and nailed it together. The idea was to attempt to simulate as much of the film setting as possible. For me, that meant a fair amount of time in Adobe Illustrator and a lot of time on the laser cutter to cut out all of the panels. Ah yes, carbon fiber paper. I love this stuff. This is what I had remaining from our Carillion drink holder project, which there's a link in the description if you want to check that out. And I thought this would work great here. From what I can tell, the visual dictionary shows that this wasn't what they used. Instead, it appears that they used the rubber material that you put in your tool drawer to keep tools from sliding around. That works, but I guess I wanted something a little more fancy with mine. On this build, I discovered a technique for making brushed aluminum, or aluminium for my overseas friends. And it starts with Rust-Oleum Aluminum Metallic, a paper towel, and steel wool. So after you spray down a layer of paint and let it dry, you take the folded paper towel and gently wipe down the piece. You want to do this in as straight line as much as possible, and do several passes. This will start to give the paint a very faint set of lines. Just don't apply too much pressure. Next, you want to take a bit of steel wool and again, pass over the piece in a straight line as much as possible. With the steel wool, you can vary the degree of pressure that you choose. You should start to see a series of lines and start to expose some of the base color underneath. This technique can also be used to add damage in areas as well. I started off with a small amount of pressure and then gradually I increased it over several areas. You'll get the hang of this once you get going. This is done on acrylic, but I also tested it on MDF. Just make sure the MDF is sanded, sealed, and has a base coat underneath the aluminum paint. Finally, take your paper towel and clean the surface. You will have created a lot of fine dust of aluminum paint, and you want to make sure that that's clear or you're going to make a mess. I'm not sure how well it comes across on camera, but I thought this was a pretty convincing brushed aluminum look, and I'm really excited to try this on more projects. While I'm working on the side panels of the box, I want to give special thanks to our insanely awesome Smugglers Guild on Patreon. The Smugglers Guild is an extraordinary community that we are so thankful for. All of you amazing members help keep this channel going, and we appreciate it more than you'll ever know. I want to give special thanks this week to both Gino Martinez for the Smugglers Guild name and Deanna Atkinson for her creative work on our Smugglers Guild logo. You guys are all amazing. Thank you. Now, the film use prop and scene did not have a panel with a bunch of greebles detailed on it, but I've never been much for screen accuracy around here. So I went ahead and added a little flair to the display. Nothing crazy, but enough to satisfy that itch. For the socket piece, we just scaled down our droid interface terminal parts and fit them in, along with a couple of simple red LEDs. Now, once the foam clay was fully cured, yeah, it was just like foam. I was able to sand it down a bit, then I did a heat seal with the heat gun. I then gave it a couple of coats of Plasti Dip, and once that dried, I was able to add a metallic gunmetal paint from my airbrush. That deviates a bit from the film prop, but again, not screen accurate. And of course, weathering with water mixable oil paint was a must for the proper amount of grime. These foam packing pieces were cut down and inserted inside the Wayfinder, and they will work perfectly as light diffusers. Simple, inexpensive, and they work amazing. Now, I was super excited about these little bits of orange acrylic, but what I was not thrilled about was the fact that you can see the glue squeeze out behind them. It was a pretty big fail on my account. I'd love to know if any of you have any suggestions on how to glue these little details down on another project in the future without the result I'm getting here. I just couldn't think of anything. Ah yes, the cable attachments. In the film, the Wayfinder has connected cables, and I searched everywhere in the shop for something that would work. Then it hit me. Design your own on Fusion 360 and print them out of resin on the resin printer. So that's what I did. I was able to create these little guys and have them fit the metal wire conduit material I had perfectly. The total print time was about 1 hour and 5 minutes, and it was so great to design exactly what I wanted, print it, and install it within a few hours. I will tell you the LED wiring for this project is 100% simple. I have 2 green LEDs at the base of the Wayfinder, a red one glued in a single point inside, and 2 red LEDs at the base of the display box. They're down there in the back. All of these are rated up to 12 volts with built-in resistors. They're all wired together and wire netted to a power supply. Now you could get super creative and do all sorts of fancy things with an Arduino or programming, or even just some flashing lights. Or you can go simple like this. I say whatever makes you happy is the way you go. Yep, that's it guys, project's done. You want to see it, right? Okay. I have to tell you, I really enjoyed this project. This happened to be a small prop that could have been a very simple one-day project that of course I complicated by building the display for it, but it feels, I don't know, there's more to it. It feels more substantial, and I just really enjoyed getting creative with a little bit of an Empire theme and tying it all together. Granted, it's not screen accurate, and we just don't do screen accurate around here. But that being said, we really hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you got something out of this. It inspired you to go out there and create one of these Wayfinders of your own, and maybe build your own custom display for it. Don't forget to check the links below so that you can get the cardboard PDF versions and the link to that video as well, so that it gives you a few more options. And yeah. Now we gotta fire this thing up and see if I can find my way to Target. I mean, it's a Wayfinder, right? Should be able to find my way to Target. Probably end up in Walmart. Oh, and don't forget, keep building something out of nothing.